Imagine a powerful CEO who's built an empire but has never known true love. Now, what happens when his world collides with a woman who has nothing but love to give? Meet Ethan Parker, a successful CEO. He has everything that money can buy, a massive fortune, a well-known business, and the respect of everyone around him. He's worked hard for everything he has, and he's built his empire from the ground up. But despite all his success, there's something missing in his life. For years, Ethan has been focused solely on business. His work consumes him, and in the process, he's shut himself off from any real personal connections. He thought he didn't need love, especially after a painful breakup left him cold and jaded. Then, there's Mia. She's a hard-working single mother doing everything she can to raise her young son, Leo, on her own. Mia's life isn't glamorous, but she makes the most of it. Her world revolves around Leo and the small, beautiful moments they share. His laugh, his smile, the way he runs to her for comfort when he's scared. Mia has faced more than her share of heartbreak, and life has not been easy for her. But despite the challenges, she stays strong, always doing her best to provide for Leo and give him a brighter future. She's come a long way from the woman she used to be. Mia has learned to survive on her own, trusting only herself and her son to get through life's struggles. But deep down, she still dreams of something more. A life where she doesn't have to worry about making ends meet. A life where love and security are no longer just wishes, but a reality. What neither Ethan nor Mia knew, though, was that their worlds were about to collide in the most unexpected way. One evening, they found themselves at the same charity gala. Ethan, attending the event as part of his usual business dealings, wasn't expecting much. He was there to meet potential investors and maintain his position in the world of business elites. Meanwhile, Mia was there as a guest, representing a EA charity that was close to her heart. She had no idea that this evening would change her life. The moment they crossed paths, their lives were never going to be the same. It all started with a glance, a simple, unremarkable moment that turned into something that neither of them could have predicted. Ethan noticed Mia first, but it wasn't just her beauty that caught his attention. It was the way she stood with her son, the tenderness in her eyes as she spoke to Leo. For a man who had built his life on business deals and cold calculations, there was something about her warmth that felt different. It was as if she brought a light into the room that no one else could. What Ethan didn't know was that Mia was just as unaware of him as he was of her. To her, the man in front of her was just another wealthy CEO, another person she had no reason to care about. She didn't expect him to give her a second glance, and truthfully, she wasn't interested in getting caught up in the life of someone so powerful and distant. But something incredible happened when Mia and Leo stood near Ethan. Leo, shy as ever, looked up at Ethan with wide eyes. And for reasons that no one could understand, the moment their gazes met, Leo reached out his hand and said the words that would forever change everything. "Mommy." Those words left everyone in the room frozen. Mia quickly tried to pull Leo away, embarrassed by the sudden attention. But as Ethan stood there, something deep inside him stirred. He didn't know why, but it felt as though fate had brought him here to this very moment, to meet Mia and her son. This was the moment everything changed for Ethan. The man who once thought that business was all that mattered now felt an overwhelming desire to protect this woman and her child. He was no longer just a CEO. He was a man who wanted to make a difference in their lives, to offer them something better, something more than what he had ever given anyone before. But Mia was hesitant. She had been hurt before and wasn't quick to trust anyone, let alone someone like Ethan. Still, as she looked at him, she saw something different. Something genuine. Ethan was offering more than just words. He was offering them a chance at a better life. He was offering to take them home, to protect them, to give them a life that Mia had only dreamed about. As Mia stood there unsure of what to do, she realized that maybe, just maybe, this was the chance she had been waiting for. She had worked so hard to give Leo a better life, but this was an opportunity that could give them more than she ever could on her own. Ethan didn't wait. Without hesitation, he insisted that they come with him. His words were firm, but kind, and Mia couldn't help but feel the sincerity behind them. She agreed, though her heart was still full of doubt. Could she trust this man? Was he really offering them a new life? Or was it just another fleeting moment? Little did Mia know. This was just the beginning of a new chapter in her life. And in Ethan's, too. What started as a simple act of kindness would soon lead to a journey neither of them could have ever predicted. Ethan Parker stood in the grand hall of the charity gala, surrounded by the city's most influential people. The air was filled with laughter, soft chatter, and the clinking of wine glasses. It was an evening designed for networking, an event where the city's elite gathered to raise money for worthy causes. But for Ethan, the gala wasn't about charity. It wasn't about making new connections or even enjoying the night. It was just another business event, another opportunity to strengthen his empire. He had built his success on precision and hard work, always with his mind focused on the next deal, the next contract, the next big move. For years, this focus had kept him away from anything personal, including love. His heart, once open to possibility, had been closed off after years of disappointment, and he was now a man more comfortable with numbers than feelings. As Ethan walked through the crowd, shaking hands and exchanging pleasantries, his mind continued to drift. He wasn't really present, just going through the motions. Then something unexpected happened. He heard someone call his name. "Ethan!" The voice was familiar yet distant. Ethan turned to find the source, and there, standing by a pillar, was a woman he didn't recognize. She had a kind face and long, dark hair, but it wasn't her that immediately caught his attention. It was the little boy standing beside her. The child, a shy boy of about 4 or 5, was looking up at Ethan with big, curious eyes. Ethan couldn't help but notice the boy's expression. Something in the child's gaze seemed so familiar, almost like a silent understanding. The woman, who must have been the boy's mother, stood next to him, but her gaze was focused on someone else in the room, not on Ethan. The moment they locked eyes, it was as if time slowed. Leo, the little boy, raised his tiny hand, and without a second of hesitation, called out in the softest voice, "Mommy." The room, which had been alive with conversation and music, suddenly fell into complete silence. Ethan froze, his eyes widening in surprise. He wasn't sure what had just happened, but it was as though the world had shifted. He hadn't been expecting such a moment, let alone from a little boy he didn't know. The crowd around them seemed equally stunned, unsure of what to do with this unexpected and intimate moment unfolding in front of them. It was one of those rare instances when reality felt suspended, and everyone in the room shared a quiet recognition that something significant had just occurred. Mia, the woman beside Leo, visibly shifted in discomfort. She quickly moved to pull her son away from the attention, but there was a look of confusion on her face. Ethan, too, stood motionless, unable to process what had just happened. His business mind was trying to make sense of the moment, but his emotions, ones he hadn't allowed himself to feel in years, were suddenly coming to the surface. Mia's face turned a shade of red as she hurriedly bent down to Leo, her voice soft, but hurried. "Leo, don't call out like that," she whispered. But there was something in her expression, something almost wistful, as she glanced up at Ethan. She had no idea who he was, and certainly she hadn't expected any kind of interaction with a man of his status. Her life, simple as it was, didn't often cross paths with people from his world. Ethan, still standing there, felt a wave of warmth that he couldn't explain. It wasn't just the child's innocent call, it was the whole scene. There was something about the way Mia was with Leo, how she cared for him, and how the boy, so young and pure, had instinctively reached out to her. Ethan had always kept his emotions in check and focused on his work and his own ambitions. But now, standing there in front of them, he felt something shift. What was it? Was it the simple love that flowed between them? The unspoken bond between mother and child? Or was it something more? Something deeper? A pull he couldn't quite name? Whatever it was, it stirred something inside Ethan, something he hadn't allowed himself to feel for a long time. The silence in the room lingered for a moment longer, and Ethan was still frozen in place. Mia, realizing the attention they were getting, stood awkwardly, pulling Leo closer to her side. She wasn't sure if this was just a weird coincidence or if the man she'd just seen had some kind of reason for being interested in her and her son. But either way, it felt awkward. She had no idea who Ethan was, and she wasn't about to get caught up in any sort of high society drama. But Ethan was different now. As the seconds passed, he felt a strange pull, a deeper understanding. Something inside him told him that this moment was important. This wasn't just some random event. This was fate. He couldn't explain why, but he knew he had to be part of their lives, that he had to offer them something. For Mia, this moment was a simple, though odd, encounter. She quickly brushed it aside, not giving it much thought. She had more pressing matters to worry about than the strange interaction with a CEO. But for Ethan, it wasn't just a passing moment. This was the start of something new, and in that split second, everything changed. Ethan, the driven CEO who had never let his emotions rule his decisions, suddenly found himself wanting more. He wanted to protect them, to care for them in a way he had never cared for anyone before. He wanted to give them a life better than what they had now, though he wasn't sure what that would look like yet. Mia had no idea what was about to unfold. She had no idea that this strange man, this powerful CEO who had been so far removed from her world, would become such a significant part of her life. But one thing was for sure. Their paths were now forever intertwined. The moment Leo had called out, "Mommy," Ethan's world had shifted. At first, it was just a fleeting surprise, a confusion that he didn't know how to handle. But now, as he stood in the middle of the gala, his mind was racing. He had never been one to focus on anything beyond business. Yet here he was, caught up in something he couldn't explain. He couldn't get the image of Mia and her son out of his mind. Something about the way they were together, the bond they shared, stirred something deep inside him. Ethan had always been the calm, collected CEO, a man who made decisions with sharp logic and cold calculation. His personal life had taken a back seat to his career for years, and he was used to shutting off his emotions. His past had taught him to avoid attachments. People came and went, and love had only ever brought him pain. He had convinced himself that he didn't need anyone, that he was better off alone, focusing solely on his business. But now, as he stood alone in the grand hall, Ethan felt something different. The sharp, business-minded exterior he had carefully built began to crack. For the first time in years, he felt something stir in his chest, a feeling he couldn't ignore. It was a deep, overwhelming need to protect Mia and Leo. He had always been focused on achieving more in life, but now, something inside him told him that he had more to give. This was different. This wasn't about business. It was about people. And the connection he felt with Mia and her son felt real. His thoughts kept returning to Leo, the way the little boy had looked at him with such innocent trust. And then there was Mia, standing beside him, protective yet unsure. Ethan couldn't help but wonder what her life had been like. He imagined the hardships she had faced, raising a child alone, struggling to provide for him. There was a strength in Mia, a quiet resilience that drew Ethan in. Ethan found himself in a state of confusion. He wasn't the type of man who made impulsive decisions, yet here he was, ready to do just that. He needed to help them, to protect them. There was no rational explanation for it. He just knew it was the right thing to do. He was a man used to having control over every aspect of his life, but with Mia and Leo, he felt like a man willing to let go of that control in exchange for something deeper, something more meaningful. Mia, on the other hand, didn't know what to think. She was overwhelmed by the attention, confused by the sudden interaction with someone like Ethan. He was a man who clearly lived a life of privilege and power, far removed from her world of struggle and simplicity. She had never trusted easily, not after everything she had been through. Her past was full of heartache and disappointment. Trusting someone, especially someone like Ethan, seemed impossible. Mia had learned the hard way not to get her hopes up, not to believe that things could be different for her and Leo. She had learned to rely on herself, to keep her head down, and focus on providing for her son. She didn't have room for distractions, and a man like Ethan Parker was definitely a distraction. She didn't know who he was or what his intentions were, but the look in his eyes, there was something genuine. Something real, and that scared her. Ethan could see the hesitation in Mia's eyes. He understood it. After all, he had been the one to shut out love and trust for so many years. But he couldn't ignore the pull he felt toward her and Leo. He couldn't stand the idea of them struggling, of them living a life filled with uncertainty. He wanted to offer them something more. Before he knew it, the words left his mouth, almost without thinking. "I can take you both home," he said, his voice steady but filled with an earnestness he couldn't hide. "You and Leo shouldn't have to worry. I can provide for you both. You deserve safety, comfort, a future where you don't have to struggle." Mia stared at him, shocked by the offer. She didn't know how to respond. She was used to doing things on her own, to fighting for every little bit of stability in her life. The thought of someone, especially a man like Ethan, offering to take care of her and her son felt both strange and impossible. But as she looked into his eyes, she saw something there that made her hesitate. There was no arrogance, no hidden agenda. There was just a man offering help. Mia's heart raced as she thought about the possibility. Could she trust him? Could she trust someone with so much power and wealth? Her instinct told her to be cautious. She couldn't afford to let her guard down, but there was something about Ethan that made her feel like maybe, just maybe, this could be the fresh start she had been longing for. She glanced down at Leo, who was now holding onto her hand, looking up at her with innocent curiosity. For him, the world was simple. He didn't understand the complexities of life, but Mia did. She had seen the harsh realities of life, and she knew that she had to do what was best for her son. Could Ethan offer them that? A better life? Reluctantly, Mia nodded. "Okay," she said softly. "I'll take you up on your offer." Ethan smiled, a warmth in his eyes that made Mia's heart skip a beat. She wasn't sure what this would mean for her or for Leo, but she knew it was the right choice. She had always wanted a better life for her son, and maybe, just maybe, this was the chance she had been waiting for. Ethan turned and motioned for them to follow him. "Let's go. I'll make sure you both get home safely," he said. His voice was kind, and for the first time, Mia noticed that he was vulnerable too. As they made their way to the door, Mia couldn't shake the feeling that her life was about to change forever. She had no idea what the future held, but one thing was clear. Ethan Parker, the man who had once seemed like a distant figure, was now offering her and Leo a chance at a life she never dreamed possible. She didn't know if she could fully trust him yet, but there was something in his offer that made her believe he was sincere. And for Leo's sake, she was willing to take that leap of faith. Mia had never been in a place like this before. As she and Leo stepped into Ethan's home, she couldn't help but feel a bit overwhelmed. The house was enormous, with high ceilings and large windows that let in the light from every direction. Everywhere. She looked. There was something beautiful. Beautiful furniture, stunning art on the walls, and more space than she had ever imagined. She had spent her life in modest apartments, making the best of what little she had. But this place was different. This was a world she had never been part of. At first, Mia felt like an outsider. The opulence of the house made her feel small and out of place. She was used to a life that was simple and practical, where every decision was made based on necessity. But here, everything seemed extravagant, unnecessary, almost. She shifted, uncomfortably, not sure where to sit or what to do. But then Ethan's voice broke her thoughts. "Make yourself at home," he said with a soft smile. It was so unlike the serious CEO she had first met. In that moment, Mia realized that the man standing before her wasn't the cold businessman who had walked into that charity gala. He was something else. Ethan led them through the house, showing them the living room and the kitchen. His steps were confident, but there was a kindness in his eyes that Mia hadn't seen before. She noticed the way he interacted with Leo. He spoke to him like he was just another kid, not like a high-powered CEO meeting a child for the first time. Ethan bent down to Leo's level and asked him what his favorite toy was, listening intently as Leo shyly answered. There was no rush, no impatience, just genuine curiosity. As the evening wore on, Mia began to feel a little more comfortable. She realized Ethan wasn't the man she had first assumed him to be. He wasn't just a successful businessman. He was kind, thoughtful, and surprisingly down-to-earth. He had been genuine when he offered to help them, and now, as he went out of his way to make them feel welcome, Mia felt something she hadn't felt in a long time: hope. It wasn't long before Leo warmed up to Ethan as well. The shy little boy who had barely said a word at the gala began to open up. At first, it was just small moments. Leo would give Ethan a shy smile when he made a joke, and then, the next time, he would laugh. Ethan seemed to know just how to get through to him. He was always patient and never pushed Leo to do anything he wasn't ready for. Mia watched as Ethan interacted with Leo, and for the first time, she saw the potential in this strange new life they were starting. Ethan wasn't just a man who had offered them a roof over their heads. He was a man who seemed to genuinely care about Leo's happiness, about making him feel comfortable and safe. That was something Mia had never imagined she would find in a man like him. As the days went by, Mia began to see more of Ethan's softer side. He would often check in on her and Leo, asking how they were adjusting to the new space. At first, Mia was hesitant to answer honestly. She didn't want to appear ungrateful, especially when Ethan had already done so much for them. But slowly, she started to open up to him. She told him about her fears, about her past struggles, about how she had always had to rely on herself. Ethan would listen intently, offering support where he could, but never pushing her to share more than she was ready to. His attentiveness made her feel seen, something she hadn't experienced in a long time. He wasn't just a man who was giving them a home. He was a man who was making an effort to understand their needs and desires. As time passed, Mia began to see the changes in Ethan. She saw how he made an effort to spend time with Leo, taking him to the park, playing games with him, and even helping him with school projects. Ethan, who had once seemed distant and focused solely on his career, was now spending more time outside of his business, more time making connections with people, real people, like Mia and Leo. It was almost as if Mia and Leo had unlocked something inside him. His attention was no longer focused only on board meetings or business deals. He had begun to shift his priorities, making time for the things that mattered most. And what mattered most, he had realized, was giving them the life they deserved. Mia couldn't help but feel a sense of disbelief. She had never imagined a life like this. When she first met Ethan, she thought he was just another rich man who was offering empty promises. But now she saw a different side to him, one that was more human, more relatable. Ethan wasn't just someone with money and power. He was someone who could make a real difference in their lives, not through grand gestures or empty words, but through actions that showed he cared. Despite her growing feelings of gratitude and appreciation for Ethan, Mia still held a small wall up. She had been burned before, and she knew better than to trust anyone too quickly. She kept reminding herself that this was all new, that she couldn't let herself get carried away with the idea of a perfect life. However, the way Ethan treated her and Leo made it hard to ignore the possibility that maybe, just maybe, they could have a better future. In the evenings, after Leo had gone to bed, Mia and Ethan would sit down together. At first, their conversations were awkward, filled with small talk and polite exchanges. But as the days went on, they began to talk about their pasts, their hopes, and their fears. Mia found herself opening up to Ethan in a way she had never before. It was as if he had a way of making her feel safe, as though she could trust him without fear of being let down. There were moments when Mia would catch herself smiling at him, at the way he looked after Leo, or the way he would ask her how her day had gone. She couldn't help but feel a warmth spreading through her chest. She had never thought she would find someone like Ethan, someone who would make her feel like she mattered, someone who would treat her and Leo with kindness and respect. As the days passed, Mia began to see a side of Ethan that she hadn't seen before. He wasn't just the man who had rescued her and Leo from a life of uncertainty. He was a man who was slowly but surely becoming part of their lives. And in return, Mia found herself starting to trust him, starting to let down her guard. It wasn't easy, but she could feel the change inside her. She was starting to believe in the possibility of a future where she and Leo could be happy, safe, and loved. And with Ethan by their side, that future seemed more possible than ever. As Mia looked around the house, she realized that they weren't just in a new home. They were starting a new chapter in their lives. And though the journey ahead would be full of challenges, she knew that they were no longer alone. Together, they could create a life that was better than she ever imagined. As the days passed, Ethan found himself more and more drawn to Mia and Leo. There was something about them, something he couldn't quite put into words. Ethan had always been driven by his career and focused on climbing the ladder of success, but something about Mia's quiet strength and the way she cared for her son touched him in a way he never expected. Her kindness, her patience, and her love for Leo, her ability to give everything for him, even when life hadn't always been kind, to her, moved him deeply. Ethan found himself thinking about them constantly. He would watch Mia as she moved around the house, caring for Leo and making sure he had everything he needed. Ethan began to appreciate how much love she put into every little action. He saw the way Leo's face would light up when Mia entered a room, the way she would make sure he felt safe and cared for. It wasn't something he had ever really understood before, this kind of selfless love. But now he couldn't help but admire it. Ethan started to take small actions to show Mia that he cared, even in ways that felt foreign to him. He began cooking dinner more often, offering to make meals when he knew Mia was tired or had a lot on her plate. The first time he cooked a simple meal for them, Mia had been surprised. She never expected the high-powered CEO to spend his free time in the kitchen, but there he was, cutting vegetables, stirring sauces, and doing it with a kind of focus he hadn't shown in his business. When the meal was ready, Mia couldn't help but smile. It was a simple gesture, but it spoke volumes about how far Ethan was willing to go to make her feel at home. He also spent more time with Leo. Ethan had always been comfortable in boardrooms and meetings, but he found that he actually enjoyed playing games with Leo, helping him with school projects, and just spending time with him. Ethan would ask Leo about his favorite things and books, and slowly Leo started to open up to him. The shy little boy who had barely spoken to Ethan at first now smiled at him and talked freely. It was a small but meaningful change that didn't go unnoticed by Mia. For Mia, though, things weren't so easy. She appreciated Ethan's kindness, but she also remained cautious. Trust didn't come easily to her. She had been through enough heartache and disappointment to know that not everything that seemed good on the surface was as it appeared. She had learned the hard way that people could be kind one moment and then pull away the next. Mia's past had taught her to protect herself, to not give too much of herself too quickly. So, while she felt a sense of gratitude toward Ethan, she kept a part of herself locked away. She told herself it was just a temporary situation. After all, Ethan was just helping them out, right? He wasn't going to stay in their lives forever. At least that's what she convinced herself. Despite Mia's guardedness, Ethan remained patient. He understood that trust was something that couldn't be rushed. He didn't push her to open up, didn't demand that she acknowledge the growing feelings between them. He simply gave her the space she needed, all the while continuing to show up for her and Leo in the small but significant ways that mattered most. When Mia was tired after a long day, Ethan would take over, helping Leo with his homework or getting him ready for bed. He never made a big deal out of it, never expected praise. He just did it because it felt right, and because he cared. And with each passing day, Mia began to see that this wasn't just about Ethan trying to fix a moment in their lives. It wasn't about him swooping in to save the day and then disappearing when the dust settled. Ethan was becoming a part of their world in a way that made Mia's heart soften. Slowly, without even realizing it, she began to let her guard down. But it wasn't just about the little things Ethan did for them. Mia started to notice something deeper in his actions. It was in the way he looked at her, like he was truly seeing her for who she was, not just as a woman in need of help, but as someone with her own strength and worth. And when he looked at Leo, she saw something else in him, a sense of responsibility, a desire to protect them both. It was a side of Ethan she hadn't expected to see. The Ethan she had met at the charity gala was a man of business, focused and driven, with no time for distractions. But Ethan, who was now part of their lives, was someone different. He wasn't just a CEO with power and influence. He was a man who genuinely cared about their well-being, who wanted to make their lives better, and who was slowly but surely becoming someone Mia could rely on. Despite all of this, Mia still had her doubts. She had been hurt before, and it wasn't easy for her to believe that Ethan's intentions were anything more than temporary. But the longer she spent with him, the more she realized that this was something real. Ethan wasn't going anywhere, and little by little Mia began to see that maybe she could let herself believe in the possibility of something more between them. Ethan, for his part, never pushed her. He never made her feel pressured to make a decision about how she felt. He simply continued to be there for her, showing up in the ways that mattered most. He knew that Mia had been through a lot, and that healing didn't happen overnight. So, he waited. One evening, as they sat together in the living room after dinner, Mia looked at Ethan in a new light. She saw him, really saw him, for the first time. She saw the way he treated her with kindness, the way he made her feel valued, and the way he had become a constant in her and Leo's life. Slowly, the walls Mia had built around her heart began to crumble, piece by piece. And though she wasn't quite ready to admit it yet, she realized that Ethan had become someone important to her. It wasn't just that he had rescued them from their struggles. It was the way he had shown them what it meant to be loved, truly loved, without expectations. The way he had earned their trust, little by little, through his actions, not just his words. As the days turned into weeks and the weeks into months, Mia began to understand that Ethan wasn't just another passing figure in her life. He was someone who was here to stay. He had proven that to her time and time again. And while she still had some doubts, she couldn't deny that something was growing between them. A bond that had started with small, simple moments but was becoming something deeper, something worth believing in. Mia may not have been ready to say the words just yet, But she was beginning to see that her life, and Leo's, was no longer just about survival. It was about living, truly living, with someone who cared for them in ways they never thought possible. And with Ethan by their side, the future suddenly seemed full of endless possibilities. Mia had worked hard to move on from her past. She had endured pain, heartbreak, and disappointment, but she had made it through. She had built a life for herself and Leo, and for the first time in a long time, she was beginning to feel hopeful about the future. But just when things seemed to be falling into place, her past came back in the most unexpected way. One afternoon, as Mia was picking Leo up from school, she saw a familiar face in the crowd. It was Aaron, her ex-boyfriend, the one who had caused her so much hurt, the one who had promised her the world and then walked away, leaving her heartbroken. She hadn't seen him in years, and the sight of him stirred up emotions she had long buried. Aaron approached her with a smile, but Mia immediately felt uneasy. He tried to make small talk, asking how she was doing and how Leo was, but all Mia could think about was the past they had shared, the lies, the betrayals, and the way he had left her when she needed him most. She tried to stay calm, but her heart raced as memories flooded back. For a moment, Mia was frozen, unsure of how to respond. She didn't want to confront him, but she also didn't want him to think he could just walk back into her life after everything he had done. As she stood there, unsure of what to do, she saw Ethan walking toward them. His eyes immediately locked on Aaron, and a protective instinct kicked in. Ethan didn't know who this man was, but he could tell from Mia's tense posture and the way she looked at him that something wasn't right. Ethan stepped forward, his presence commanding and confident, and placed himself between Mia and Aaron. He didn't need to say anything for Aaron to get the message. There was no room for him in this life anymore, not in Mia's world and certainly not in Ethan's. Mia was taken aback. She hadn't expected Ethan to react that way. She had been so focused on her own emotions, unsure of how to handle the situation, but Ethan had stepped in without hesitation, offering her the protection she didn't know she needed. For a moment, Mia was overwhelmed with gratitude and confusion. Why did Ethan care so much? He was just helping her, right? But his actions spoke, louder than any words could. He stood firm, his gaze unwavering, and without a single word to Aaron, he made it clear that Mia was not to be disturbed. As Aaron left, Mia's heart was still pounding, but she felt a sense of relief wash over her. Ethan had shielded her from her past in a way she hadn't even known was possible. She didn't have to face that painful chapter alone, not anymore. Ethan was here, and he was showing her that she didn't have to carry her past with her. Later that night, Mia found herself sitting in the living room with Ethan, her thoughts racing. She wanted to thank him for what he had done, but she was still unsure of how she felt. Aaron's sudden appearance had stirred up doubts and fears, and she didn't want to drag Ethan into her mess. She didn't want to risk hurting him the way she had been hurt in the past. Ethan sat beside her, his tone soft and steady as he spoke. "You don't have to go through this alone, Mia. I'm here for you. Whatever you need, whatever you're feeling, I'm not going anywhere." His words were simple, but they meant everything to Mia. She had never expected someone like Ethan to be so understanding, so willing to be there for her. She had always kept her emotions tightly guarded, afraid of being hurt again, but Ethan's presence was a reassurance that she didn't have to face the world on her own anymore. Still, Mia's doubts lingered. "I don't want to bring you into my problems," she admitted. "I've been hurt before, Ethan. I don't want to make the same mistakes again." Ethan looked at her, his expression gentle but firm. "Mia, I'm not like him. I'm not going to hurt you. I know you've been through a lot, but I'm here and I'm not going anywhere. You and Leo are my priority, and I'll fight for both of you no matter what." His words were a promise, one that Mia had never heard before. It was more than just reassurance. It was a declaration of his intentions, of his commitment to her and Leo. In that moment, Mia realized that Ethan wasn't just offering her a temporary escape from her past. He was offering her a future, one where she didn't have to carry the weight of her past alone. For the first time, Mia let herself believe that maybe, just maybe, she could have something real with Ethan. She didn't have to be afraid anymore. She didn't have to keep her heart locked away, constantly expecting the worst. Ethan had proven through his actions that he was different. He wasn't like the men from her past. He wasn't going to hurt her. This moment, though difficult, became a turning point for Mia. She realized that Ethan's feelings for her were real, that he truly cared for her and Leo. And for the first time, in a long time, Mia allowed herself to believe that maybe she could let go of her past. Maybe she could finally trust someone again. The path ahead wasn't going to be easy. Mia knew that. Her past would always be a part of her, but it no longer had to define her. Ethan's presence in her life had shown her that she could have more than just survival. She could have happiness, love, and a future that didn't have to be shaped by the mistakes of her past. With Ethan by her side, Mia began to see a future where she didn't have to be afraid of her past anymore. She could let go of the pain and the doubt and step into a new chapter of her life, one filled with hope, love, and the promise of a brighter tomorrow. And for the first time in a long time, Mia allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, she deserved it. As the days passed, Ethan found himself reflecting on everything that had happened. His life had always been about his business, his empire, his goals, and his success. But now, sitting in the quiet of his luxurious home, he couldn't ignore the truth that was becoming clearer by the day. His priorities were shifting. Mia and Leo were no longer just people in his life. They were the center of it. He realized that his business, which had always been his main focus, was nothing compared to the bond he was forming with them. Ethan's realization hit him hard. He wasn't just a CEO anymore. He was a man who had to choose between the life he had built in the business world and the one he could build with Mia and Leo. The truth was, he had never experienced real love before, not in the way he was starting to feel for Mia and Leo. His empire had been enough to satisfy him for years, but it wasn't enough anymore. He thought about his past, his work, his cold and distant relationships, his focus on success at any cost. But now, when he thought about Mia and Leo, he knew what mattered most. They were the ones who had shown him the value of real connection. They were the ones who had brought warmth and meaning into his life. Ethan had built his career on the belief that success was everything, but now he understood that love and family were just as important, if not more so. He made a promise to himself that day. He would put family first. He would stop chasing after success at the expense of the people who mattered most. He would dedicate himself to Mia and Leo, not just as a protector or provider, but as someone who wanted to build a life with them. Ethan knew that to make this work, he had to be present, truly present in their lives. He vowed to show them every single day that they were his priority. Ethan wasn't naive. He knew it wouldn't be easy. Mia had been through a lot in her life, and trust wasn't something that came easily to her. She had suffered betrayal and heartache in the past, and Ethan wasn't blind to that. He understood that his words alone wouldn't be enough to convince her. Mia needed to see through his actions that he was committed to building a life with her and Leo, that he was ready to be the man they deserved. Meanwhile, Mia was still processing everything. She had started to believe that maybe Ethan was different, but doubt was a constant companion for her. She had been hurt before, and her past had taught her to be cautious. Ethan's words were kind and sincere, but could he really change? Could he truly put her and Leo first in the way she needed him? Mia's heart longed to believe in him, but her mind wasn't so sure. She had seen so many people make promises in the past, only to break them. She had heard the words she needed to hear before, but those words had never turned into action. Ethan's promises, though filled with good intentions, didn't erase the pain of her past. How could she be certain that he wasn't just another man who would let her down? Mia didn't want to make the same mistakes again. She wanted to trust Ethan, but trusting someone was difficult, especially after everything she had been through. Her mind was torn between the possibility of a future with Ethan and the fear of what that future might hold. Could he really change? Was he truly committed to them? Or was he just saying what he thought she wanted to hear? These were the questions that kept her up at night. Ethan understood her hesitation, but he wasn't about to give up. He had seen the doubts in Mia's eyes, and he knew they were valid. But he also knew that he could prove himself to her, not through promises, but through consistent actions. He would be there for her and Leo, day in and day out, showing them, both, that he was in this for the long haul. He would take the time to listen to Mia and support her in ways that mattered, not just with grand gestures, but in the small, everyday moments that showed how much he cared. Ethan knew he couldn't rush things. Trust was built slowly, over time, and Mia had been hurt enough that she couldn't just let go of her walls immediately. He was prepared to be patient, to earn her trust the hard way, one day at a time. The journey wouldn't be quick, but Ethan was committed to it. He wasn't going anywhere. He understood that Mia needed time. He respected that. But he also knew that he had to keep showing up for her and Leo. He needed to be the kind of man who wasn't just focused on his own success, but on building something that would last with them. Ethan wanted to be the man who proved to them that family mattered more than anything else. He wanted to show them that he was capable of loving them in a way that was real and lasting. Mia, for her part, was beginning to see a different side of Ethan. She had been cautious at first, skeptical of his intentions, but the way he was showing up for her and Leo was undeniable. He was there when she needed him, he made time for them, and he listened in ways that mattered. Slowly, she started to let her guard down. It wasn't easy, but with every action Ethan took to show his commitment, Mia found herself trusting him just a little bit more. The road ahead was still uncertain, but for the first time, Mia felt like, maybe, just maybe, Ethan was the man who could keep his promises. He was showing her that he wasn't like the others, that he truly cared for her and Leo. And as much as her heart longed to believe in him, she knew that it wasn't just about words. It was about how he treated her and Leo, how he made them feel safe, valued, and loved. Ethan knew that this was just the beginning. He had made a promise to change, to prioritize Mia and Leo above all else. But he also knew that promises alone wouldn't be enough. It was the everyday choices, the small but significant actions, that would show Mia he was serious. He was ready for the challenge because he knew that the love and life he could build with Mia and Leo were worth every effort. The only question left was whether Mia would be able to fully trust him with her heart and with the future they could create together. Will they stay together or part ways? A crisis had hit Ethan's life, something he hadn't expected. It wasn't a simple business issue that could be solved with a few phone calls or meetings. It was a deep personal problem, something that threatened the stability he had worked so hard to build. Whether it was a family emergency or a critical business decision, Ethan was thrown into a whirlwind of uncertainty. For the first time in a long while, he found himself struggling with his priorities. Everything he had known, everything he had focused on for so long, was being challenged. His mind raced as he tried to solve the problems in front of him. But amidst the chaos, he couldn't shake the thought of Mia and Leo. He had promised them he would be there, that he would make them a priority in his life. But now, faced with this major event, he wasn't sure how he could balance his commitment to them with the demands of his world. The weight of it all started to crush him, and for the first time, he wondered if he had made a mistake. Had he been Too quick to promise things he wasn't sure he could deliver? Could he really be the man Mia and Leo needed him to be when his world was crumbling around him? Mia, on the other hand, was watching closely. She had been through enough to know when someone was truly struggling. As Ethan dealt with the crisis, she saw the toll it was taking on him. But what shocked her wasn't just how hard he was working to fix things. It was the way he kept coming back to her and Leo, no matter how tough things got. He wasn't withdrawing or pulling away, as she had feared. Instead, he was reaching out, trying to stay connected, even as his world fell apart. In those moments, something shifted inside Mia. She realized that Ethan wasn't just a man with a successful career who had gotten caught up in the pressures of life. He was a man who cared, who deeply cared for her and Leo. He was showing her through his actions that his love for them was not a passing thing. It wasn't just about grand gestures or the money he had. It was about his willingness to put everything on the line to protect them. She saw that now, in ways she hadn't before. Ethan, despite everything he was going through, was doing everything he could to make sure they were okay. The business could fail, his empire could crumble, but Mia and Leo were his focus. He had never cared about anything the way he cared for them, and that truth became clearer every day. Mia began to see the depth of his feelings for her. She understood that he wasn't just trying to keep his promises. He was trying to build a life with her, one that could weather even the toughest storms. Mia had always been cautious. She had been hurt before, and the fear of getting hurt again had kept her from fully trusting anyone, especially men like Ethan. But as she watched him deal with his crisis, she saw something in him she hadn't seen before, a man who was capable of loving her and Leo in a way that felt real. His actions, his struggle, and his desire to make things right made her believe that maybe, just maybe, he was someone she could trust. But trust, as Mia knew all too well, wasn't something that could be given lightly. The last time she had trusted someone, it had shattered her heart. So she didn't rush into any decisions. Instead, she took a step back and reflected. Could she really let herself believe in this? Could she trust that Ethan was the man he seemed to be? Or was she setting herself up for more pain? The hardest part was Leo. Mia had promised herself that she would always do what was best for him, even if that meant walking away from someone she loved. She couldn't let her heart lead her into a situation that might hurt her son. But she also knew that Leo needed stability, and the love Ethan was showing them both could be the foundation for that stability. So Mia took the time she needed to think things through. She needed to weigh the good and the bad, the promises and the doubts. She considered everything that had happened, everything she had seen in Ethan over the last few months. The way he had come through for her and Leo, the way he had been there when she needed him most, the way he was putting his world on hold to make sure they were safe. After much reflection, Mia made her decision. She chose to stay. She chose to trust Ethan, even with all the uncertainty that still lingered. She realized that no one could ever be perfect, but Ethan had proven time and time again that he was someone who cared, someone who wanted to build something lasting. Mia had been scared of repeating the mistakes of her past, scared of trusting again. But in the end, she realized that love wasn't about having all the answers or being without flaws. It was about the willingness to take risks, to be vulnerable, and to choose each other every day, even when things were difficult. Ethan's crisis hadn't been the end of their story. It had been the beginning of a new chapter. In that moment, Mia realized that love wasn't about grand gestures or wealth. It was about the small, everyday moments that proved they were meant to be together. It wasn't about the promises they made, but about the actions they took, day in and day out, to show each other how much they cared. And so, Mia and Ethan's relationship entered a new phase. They still had challenges ahead of them, but they were ready to face them together. They had learned that love wasn't always easy, but it was worth fighting for. They had learned that trust took time and that the deepest connections were built, not on perfection but on understanding, compromise, and love. In the end, they had chosen each other, and that was enough. Ethan and Mia's journey had been a roller coaster of emotions and challenges, but in the end, it was one of transformation and growth. Ethan, the successful and seemingly distant CEO, had opened his heart in a way he never thought possible. Mia, on the other hand, had learned to trust again, to love again, even after all the pain and betrayal she had endured in the past. When Mia first entered Ethan's world, she was unsure of what to expect. She never imagined that she would end up seeing a different side of him, one that was caring, thoughtful, and committed. Ethan's transformation didn't happen overnight, but over time, through his actions and the way he put his family first, Mia began to see that he was genuine. The tough, business-driven man she once knew had become someone who was willing to go to great lengths to ensure that she and Leo felt safe and loved. On the other hand, Ethan's journey was just as profound. Mia helped him open his heart to love again, something he had shut off for years due to the pressures and disappointments of his past. Through her kindness and strength, he discovered that there was more to life than success and wealth. He learned that love could be a steady, reliable force in his life. Mia and Leo became his anchor, and he understood that building a life with them was more important than anything else he had ever done. Together they had built a new life, one that was filled with love, warmth, and security. It wasn't perfect, and there would always be challenges ahead. But they had learned how to face those challenges together. They had come to understand that love isn't about grand gestures or fleeting moments of passion. It's about consistency, care, and the effort you put into nurturing a relationship. The small acts of kindness, the quiet moments spent together, and the support they gave each other made their bond stronger than ever. As they moved forward in their relationship, Ethan and Mia knew that they would continue to face obstacles. But they also knew that they had something real. The love they shared had grown from trust, patience, and the willingness to be vulnerable with each other. Through all the trials, they had built a foundation that they could rely on. In the end, love was not about being perfect. It was about the effort to show up every day for the person you care about. It was about choosing to put in the work, no matter how hard it seemed. Ethan and Mia had learned that love wasn't something that could be rushed. It required time, understanding, and a commitment to each other. They had chosen to embrace these lessons, and in doing so, had created a life together that was full of hope. What do you think? Is Ethan's change real, or is it too little, too late? What would you do if you were in Mia's shoes? Share your thoughts in the comments below.